Hello aspirants, welcome to Epitome IAS. This is Mansoor. So we have started this NCRT series as a part of NCRT series. So far we have discussed class 6th geography NCRT, and in today's session we are going to see third chapter of 7th class NCRT, and this third chapter talks about our changing earth. So the point here is the name itself is saying that earth is changing. So in this chapter we will be seeing how earth is changing and why earth is changing, and how frequently the changes in the earth will be happening, and we will be seeing what are the other reasons or other forces that were present on the earth or inside the crust which are responsible for the changes or the movement of the earth. So all those things which are fundamentally needed, so those things will be discussed in this particular chapter. Okay, so without any further delay, if we move on to this chapter, so we know that earth is changing day by day. But the thing here is, if you see geographically, in geographical terms, we already seen that lithosphere has been divided into many plates, and we understood that because of movement of these plates, there were some things that were happening on the earth and inside the earth. But in this particular chapter, what he was saying is, he was saying that lithosphere which is present on the earth, this lithosphere was broken into many plates, and in this particular chapter he is saying that those plates were called as lithospheric plates. Okay, that is point number one. Now we should understand that we are discussing that these plates are moving. So first of all, we should be knowing what is the reason for movement of these plates. If you see the reason is very simple. Reason is that, so in previous classes, when or while we are discussing about layers of the earth, we have seen that magma chamber is present, or we can tell that asthenosphere is present between crust and upper mantle, or mantle, and that asthenosphere will be having the magma, the lava, and that particular chamber or that particular sphere will be continuously moving because it is in liquid form. Okay, semi-liquid form. Now the point here is, since these lithospheric plates are placed upon this magma chamber, because of movement of magma, in magma chamber, we can experience that these plates will be moving. Okay, and if you see the speed of movement of the plates, see, I'm not telling that these plates will be moving very fastly. So how fast these plates will be moving? These plates will be moving in millimeters. In a year, if you see, these plates will be moving in only in millimeters. Okay, so they won't be moving very fast. Okay, they are moving very slowly. But if you compare or consider over a period of time, obviously we can see the movement of these particular plates. Now, the third important point given in this chapter is, there are some forces which are created, or which are the result or the byproduct of these movements. If you see these forces, we can divide these forces into two. What are those forces? One, endogenic forces. Second one is exogenic force. Okay, endogenic force as well as exogenic force. So the point here is, see, when we are talking about endogenic force, what does it means? If you divide this term, endo plus genic means origin. So endo means inside. That means the force which is created or generated inside the earth is called as endogenic force. Then what about exogenic force? Even in exogenic, we can tell genic means origin, exo means outside. So that means the forces which are generated on the surface of the earth, that means the forces which are generated outside the interior of the earth, or which are generated on the crust of the earth, is called as exogenic forces. Okay, now the point here is, because of these endogenic forces, we can be seeing that sudden movements that are happening on the earth. That means we can tell that because of these endogenic forces, we can experience the sudden movements. Sometimes we will be having the slow movements. So because of these endogenic sudden movements, we will be having earthquakes. Okay, so we can tell that earthquake is a form of is created or is a result of endogenic force. Then what about exogenic force? In exogenic force, we can tell that these forces which are created on the surface of the earth. Okay, now in this particular chapter, he has given a table. He is saying that movement of the earth was done or it was created by two forces, that is endogenic force and exogenic force. Endogenic forces are sudden forces and we call these forces as diastrophic forces. Okay, so examples of sudden forces are earthquakes, volcanoes and landslides. And if you see exogenic forces, these exogenic forces will be resulting in erosional and depositional things on the layer of the earth. So what are the agents for erosional and depositional things? One, river; second, wind; third, sea waves; and fourth, glaciers. So in this particular chapter, we will be seeing about each and every thing. So we understood that endogenic forces causes earthquakes, and because of these endogenic forces, we will be experiencing the earthquake. And if you see here he has given that here he has taken a volcano and he was saying that through this volcano, actually he has given the definition of volcano. Volcano is nothing but it is an vent or opening in the earth crust through which the molten magma will be erupting. Okay, now what happens? Similarly, volcanic action is also a result or is also a byproduct of these endogenic forces. Then a second byproduct is earthquake. So what is meant by earthquake? Earthquake is nothing but the vibrations. Okay, the vibrations which were created or which were generated because of movement of the lithospheric plates. Okay, that kind of vibrations or that vibrations will be traveling inside the crust. Okay, and sometimes what they will be doing, they will be coming out of the crust and they will be destroying the things that were present on the crust. So this is what about earthquake. Now the point here is, there is a point or there is a source point where the earthquake or the vibrations have started, and that source point we call it as an focus. So what is meant by focus? Focus is a point in the crust where the movement starts, the vibration starts. That particular point is called focus. And the point here is, this focus will be lying inside the crust. Okay, now the point which is opposite to this focus, or the point which is exactly above this focus, and that point is present on the surface of the earth, that particular point we call it as an epicenter. Are you getting my point? That means, for suppose if there is any vibration which is generated inside the crust, we call that as an focus. Now the vibrations which are generated in the focus will be traveling and they will be coming out of the crust. So the point where the vibrations will be first experiencing, and the point which is exactly opposite or exactly above this focus, we call that particular point as an epicenter. Now the point here is, near epicenter, what happens? Near epicenter, we will be seeing a huge amount of destruction. Are you getting my point? Okay. And the intensity or the magnitude of earthquake will be very high near epicenter. So from epicenter, if you are traveling away from the epicenter, you will be having a less amount of intensity and less amount of magnitude. Okay. So this is what about earthquake. This is how earthquake will spread. Now the point here is, if you see the types of earthquakes that actually we are having, so we can differentiate the waves or the seismic waves which were generated because of this earthquake. We can differentiate them into three. One, P waves. First type is P waves. Second type is secondary waves. Third type is L waves. And these P waves are also called as longitudinal waves. Longitudinal waves. And secondary waves, that is S waves. These waves are also called as transverse waves. Transverse waves. And the L waves are also called as surface waves. That means the waves which are presented or which are presented on the surface of the earth. Okay, so this is the thing or content given in this particular chapter, and the point here is there are some other things which should be known regarding this earthquake. Okay, if you see the instrument which is used to measure the earthquake is a seismometer. Okay, or else we can call it as seismograph. And if you see the scales which were used to measure earthquakes are Richter scale and magnitude scale, or we can call it as a Mercalli scale. So what is meant by Richter scale? What does a Richter scale do? Richter scale generally it will be measuring the magnitude of the earthquake. Okay, and what does Mercalli scale will be doing? Mercalli scale will be telling us the intensity of the earthquake. Okay, and if you see the Richter scale, the readings will be from 1 to 12. The readings will be from 1 to 12, and if you say take intensity scale, that is Mercalli scale, it will be 1 to 10. Okay, the point here is in Richter scale, for suppose if the intensity in Mercalli scale or in Richter scale, the number, if you are going if the number is increasing, that means if there is an earthquake and that earthquake is recording or measuring one on 5 Richter scales, that means the destruction which is happening because of that particular earthquake will be lesser when compared to the earthquake which recorded 7 on Richter scale. Okay, right. So that is the thing which we should be knowing in this particular chapter, and there are certain things which we should be knowing extra, and those things we will be seeing in upcoming classes. Okay, because we should be confining to the content which is given in this particular NCERT. Okay, so that step by step you will be able to understand the concept from a lower level to the higher level. Okay, so the main aim or the main agenda for this NCERT series is in order to make you understand the geography from a basic level to high level. Okay, if I start telling the high level concepts of geography in single class, it will be very difficult for you to remember. So first of all, we will be training or making our brain very prepared for understanding the higher concepts that will be coming in this geography. Okay, right. So the next thing which we should be knowing in this particular chapter is regarding the major landforms. See, here the point is the major landforms or the landscape which is present on the earth, it was generally created or generally changed because of two things. One, weathering and erosion. So first of all, what is meant by weathering? So we should be knowing about weathering and erosion. So what is meant by weathering? So weathering is nothing but it is a breaking up of rocks on the earth's surface. Then what is meant by erosion? Erosion is wearing away of the landscape by different agents such as water, air and ice. So the point here is the basic definitions which were given in this particular chapter. We should be knowing that weathering is nothing but breaking up of the rocks or breaking up of the bigger particles which were present on the earth's surface, and erosion is nothing but transporting those things to the other places. Either it might be because of water, it might be because of wind, or it might be because of ice. So because of these two processes which were continuously happening on the surface of the earth, we can see that landforms will be changed from one thing to other thing. Okay, so that is how the major landforms are created on the earth's surface. Okay, now the point here is, if you see the river, how does a river act as an agent in forming the land forms? If you see, let us take an example of a river. For suppose if you take Ganga river, which is originated in Himalayas, that means we can tell that the origin of Ganga river is happening in a hilly area. Okay, that means the origin of Ganga river is happening in a solid terrain. Okay, hill terrain. Then what happens from the point of origin? The Ganga river will be traveling and it will be entering the plains, Ganga plains. Okay, then after that, at the end of its journey, it will be merging with Bay of Bengal. Okay, that is the story. Now the point here is when this river has been originated from the hills, this river will be traveling from the hills and it will be entering the plains. So during this process, what happens is because of the speed of the river, the hills, because of speed of the river, the hill terrain or the solid terrain which is present on the below the river will be broken into small pieces. Okay, and these smaller pieces, what they will be doing, these smaller pieces or the smaller molecules or the smaller particles will be traveling along the water. And what happens? This water along with these solid particles will be entering into plains. So where there is a possibility of depositing these particular sediments, the river will be depositing those particular sediments. Then what happens when all the silt or when all the sediments are deposited at one place by the river, that particular area we call it as a plain. And we know that plain is made up of huge deposits of sediments, and this plain is very fertile in nature. Okay, so this is what happens when river is flowing from a hilly terrain or a solid terrain, and when it enters into the plain. Okay, now the other thing is the rivers will be forming meanders. Okay, so meanders and the rivers will be forming levees, and as I told you earlier, the rivers will be forming floodplains as well. Okay, so now if you see the work of sea waves, if you see the role of sea waves in erosions near sea, so we can see that sea caves or sea arches or stacks will be formed because of a continuous flow, continuous movement of waves. Okay, so the sea waves, sea arches and stacks were formed because of all these landforms were created because of the sea waves which were continuously happening. Then what about ice? What are the things or what are the major landforms that ice will be forming? Ice will be forming glacial moraines. What is meant by glacial moraine? So glacial moraine is nothing but see these glaciers. These glaciers will be transporting, or these glaciers will be taking away, transporting some smaller particles to bigger particles. All these smaller particles or bigger particles, minute particles, sediments, all these things will be deposited in a place. Okay, same thing will be happening in river as well. Okay, now because this thing is happening because of the glaciers, we call that particular sediments which were transported and deposited at certain place, those type of materials we call as an moraines, glacial moraines. Okay, then what about winds? Winds will be contributing to form mushroom rocks, and winds will be contributing to form sand dunes. Okay, so these are the structures which were formed because of this particular wind. Okay, so in this particular chapter we have seen all these things, and the point here is regarding each and every major landform in class 11 we will be studying detailed. Okay, so in this particular chapter he has mentioned examples how what are the things that were formed because of water, what are the things that were formed because of wind, and what are the things that were formed because of glaciers. Okay, detailedly how they are formed, what is the process behind that, all entire thing we will be discussing in 11th class NCERT. Okay, so don't worry about that. So that is what given in this particular chapter. So we will be meeting in the next chapter, that is chapter number 4. In chapter number 4 we will be discussing about atmosphere, and the name of that chapter is air. Okay, so thank you so much for watching this video. If you are having any doubts, let me know in comment section.